Welcome everyone. In the previous video, we learned some of the basics about adjectives. Today, we're going to look at how adjectives are used to compare nouns or pronouns. So just a quick reminder that adjectives are describing words and they're used to tell us more about a noun or a pronoun. Adjectives can also be used to compare objects in the sentence. And there are 3 degrees or 3 forms of comparison, right? So the first form is positive form, and we use that when we're going to compare two objects that are of equal value. As an example, let's look at the adjective tall. So if we're going to compare two objects of equal value that are same height, as in this example here, we will say the giraffe is as tall as the tree, and the form of the adjective is tall. The second form of comparison of the adjective is what we call the comparative form, right? And we use that when we are comparing two objects that are of unequal value. So again, we're going to be using the height and we're going to use the same examples. So in this case, if you look, we will see that the giraffe is taller than the tree. So it's two objects, we're using comparative form, and the comparative form of the adjective tall is taller. And finally, we have the superlative form, and we use that superlative form when we are comparing 3 or more objects of unequal value. So let's look at another example. In this case, we have 3 objects. And here we say the giraffe is the tallest of the 3. So the superlative form of the adjective tall is tallest. So there are some rules for forming the superlative or the comparative forms of the adjective, right? So for most simple one-syllable adjectives, when we want to create the comparative form, we can add er, and to create the superlative form, we would add est to the original adjective or to the positive form of the adjective, right? So let's look at some examples of that. So we're going to start by looking at strong. So the adjective strong, to form the comparative form of it, we would add er to the word, which gives us stronger, and the superlative one, we would add est to strong to give us strongest. And the same thing happens with dark, where we form darker and darkest. Now we have another rule. If the adjective ends in a consonant preceded by a vowel, then what we would do is we would double the consonant and then add er or est. So you can see that with big, where we form bigger by adding a g and then er, and we form biggest, the superlative form, by adding a g and then est. And the same thing we do with red to form redder and reddest. If the adjective ends in the letter e, then we're not going to add an e again. So we would just add r and st. You can see that with nice, where we just add r to form the comparative, nicer, and st to form the superlative, nicest. And if the adjective ends with the letter y, then what we do is we change the y to an I before we add the er or the est. So you can see that we do that here with the word dry. For most adjectives with 2 or more syllables, we add the word more to create the comparative form and the word most to create the superlative form. Let me show you some examples of that. So let's look at the adjective careful. To form the comparative form of it, we would add more to it so it becomes more careful, and for superlative we add the word most in front and we get most careful. The same thing with active. When we go to dangerous, again we would say more dangerous, and for the comparative form, most dangerous for superlative form. And for interesting, we would say more interesting for the comparative form and most interesting for the superlative form. So what I want you to remember is that these are general rules, and as with anything, there will be exceptions to the rules. And then we have the extreme cases where we have irregular adjectives. And with irregular adjectives, there is no rhyme or reason or rule that you can think of that will help you. So for these adjectives, you just have to learn them. And there are many grammar books that you will see listings of irregular adjectives, and you just memorize them and learn them. So for example, we have good, and the comparative form of good is better. Superlative form of good is best. Then we have bad. The comparative form of bad is worse, and the superlative form is worst. We've got many, comparative, more, superlative is most. And all the way down where we have far, the comparative form of far is farther or further, and the superlative form is farthest or furthest. So here are three quick examples of using adjectives to compare objects. So in the first instance, we're going to be using positive form of the adjective where we're comparing two objects that have equal value. So in the first one, the adjective is fast, and we're going to say John is as fast as his dad. We use the same form of the adjective. And adjective here is good. Sam is as good as Leo. Similarly here, Mary is as active as Martha. Let's look at three other examples. Now we're going to compare two objects of unequal value, okay? So now we're using the same adjectives, and we say here, John is faster than Richard. Sam is better than Leo. That's the comparative form. And we say Mary is more active than Martha. Finally, looking at the superlative where we're comparing three or more objects. So there's sometimes when you have to assume that there are three or more objects in that noun, okay? So here, when we say John is, and we're using fast on the team, we're assuming that the team is going to be three or more people, okay? So we say here, John is the fastest on the team. Next one, Sam is the best player in the band. That's the superlative form of the adjective good. And now we want the superlative form of the adjective active, and so we're going to say Mary is the most active girl in our class. Okay, so to recap what we just covered in this video, we looked at adjectives again, and we remember that an adjective is used in a sentence to tell us more about a noun. And the adjectives can also be used to compare nouns, and there are 3 degrees of comparison. There's positive, where we compare two nouns that have equal value. We use the comparative form of the adjective to compare two nouns of unequal value. And when we have 3 nouns or more of unequal value, then we're going to use the superlative form of the adjective. So thank you for watching our video. Remember that you can always practice questions using our English for 11 Plus program. You can try the demo questions on our website at my11plus.com, and you can find us online on various social media channels using My11 Plus.